Iran just fired at a ship it gave permission to sail. The captain was on the radio, talking to the same people shooting at him. That is not a ceasefire. That is a country that has lost control of itself. And right now, that country is the one America is trying to negotiate with. Stay with this, because what is happening today is not what the headlines are telling you. This is day 53 of Operation Roaring Lion. And today, the rules changed. Let's be precise about what a ceasefire is supposed to mean. It means both sides pause, both sides breathe, both sides move, even slightly, toward resolution. What is happening right now between the United States, Israel, and Iran is something categorically different. The missiles have stopped, but the blockade hasn't. The talks are supposedly happening, but nobody agrees on what was said. The skies are quiet, the seas are not. This is not peace. This is a siege dressed in diplomatic language. And if you think the worst is behind us, you have not been watching closely enough. Drop a comment below right now. Do you think a real deal is even possible here? Because what we are about to walk through will seriously challenge that assumption. Trump made his move today, and it was not what anyone predicted. He extended the ceasefire. But he attached one condition to that extension that tells you exactly where things stand. Iran must submit, and this is his word, a unified proposal before any further negotiations proceed. Not a strong proposal, not a detailed proposal, a unified one. Because Trump, who has been receiving daily intelligence briefings on the internal Iranian situation, said publicly that Iran's government is, quote, seriously fractured. Think about what that means. The American president is not saying Iran is being difficult. He is saying Iran does not know what it wants, or more accurately, different parts of Iran want completely opposite things, and those parts are actively working against each other. That is not a negotiating problem. That is a structural collapse problem. JD Vance was supposed to fly to Islamabad to negotiate directly with Iranian intermediaries. That trip has been put on hold indefinitely. The official reason: Iran refused to respond to the latest American negotiating positions. When the second highest official in the United States cancels a diplomatic mission because the other side won't pick up the phone, that is not a scheduling conflict. That is a signal. Stock markets read it that way immediately. Prices fell, oil rose, and the window that looked briefly open started closing again. If this story is moving fast for you, that is because it is moving fast in real life. We break this down every single day, so hit subscribe and you will not miss what comes next. Now, here is where it gets more complicated. Trump extended the ceasefire, but he did not remove the blockade, and he did not set a new deadline, which sounds reasonable until you understand the math of leverage. The original deadline was the thing forcing both sides toward urgency. Remove the deadline, and Iran's incentive to deliver that unified proposal drops significantly. Trump's own advisors reportedly warned him about this privately before the announcement. An open-ended extension without consequences is not pressure. It is a pause with no clock. And the Iranians, fractured as they are, understand that better than most. The Iranian cargo ship Tusca is sitting disabled in the Strait of Hormuz right now, and it is more significant than a single maritime incident. The USS Bruin spent hours warning the vessel. When it refused to comply, American forces hit the engine room with a precision strike, disabling propulsion, not sinking the ship. Then U.S. Marines boarded it. The Americans were deliberate about something specific. They did not want a burning, sinking Iranian vessel. That kind of image makes martyrs. What they wanted was a controlled demonstration, clinical, visible, and undeniable. From Washington's perspective, this was lawful enforcement of a naval blockade. From Tehran's, Iran's foreign minister called it an act of war and a direct violation of the ceasefire. The Revolutionary Guard demanded immediate release. And inside Iran, IRGC commanders began accusing their own civilian negotiators of being too weak, which made those negotiators' positions even more fragile going into every subsequent conversation. We crossed a line today, not from threat to escalation, from deterrence into direct action. That distinction matters more than almost anything else being said right now. Here is the part nobody is talking about loudly enough. For nearly 5 decades, Iran's ultimate deterrence card has been the Strait of Hormuz. Hurt us, and we locked the door on the world's oil supply. The logic held for a long time. But you can only threaten to push a doomsday button so many times before the world starts building doors that don't need your key. Saudi Arabia has been rerouting oil through upgraded pipelines across the Arabian Peninsula at volumes approaching pre-war levels. The United States has been positioning itself as an emergency supplier to Asian markets scrambling for stable energy. Tankers that once flowed through the Persian Gulf are rerouting entirely. And here is the part that changes the strategic picture completely. The blockade and the resulting oil disruption is, in a perverse way, commercially beneficial to the United States while being economically devastating to Iran. The Strait of Hormuz, Iran's supposed trump card, may have become the trap it walked into willingly. And yet, the strait is still genuinely dangerous. The Revolutionary Guard operates a swarm fleet, fast, heavily armed small boats running hit-and-run tactics from coastal positions that are far harder to eliminate than a conventional navy. Active American mine-clearing operations are underway right now. Washington is not assuming the water will calm on its own. The Indian tanker incident tells you everything about what is actually broken inside Iran. An Iranian official granted a vessel safe passage. Then other Iranian forces opened fire on that same ship. The captain was on the radio with the people shooting at him. He was telling them he had permission. India summoned Iran's ambassador in formal protest. What you are looking at is one of two things. Either two Iranian factions are deliberately undermining each other, or forces on the ground no longer reliably take orders from any central authority. Both possibilities are catastrophic for any negotiation, because a deal signed by people who cannot enforce it is not a deal. It is paperwork. The internal picture emerging from multiple reports looks like this. Iran's civilian team, led by Parliament Speaker Ghalibaf and Foreign Minister IRGC, has broadly supported continued talks. The IRGC leadership, particularly Commander General Ahmad Vahidi and his deputies, has opposed any concessions and conditioned any return to talks on a full lifting of the naval blockade first. These are not two sides disagreeing on strategy. These are two sides actively working to sabotage each other's position. And Trump's condition, waiting for a unified proposal, now looks less like a diplomatic demand and more like a test of whether Iran is capable of governing itself through this crisis at all. There is another layer that only emerged publicly this week. A Revolutionary Guard covert network was dismantled. A cell caught in Azerbaijan planning to strike the BTC oil pipeline, the Israeli embassy in Baku, and Jewish institutions in the region. The network traced back to Unit 400 inside the IRGC's intelligence apparatus. Several senior commanders connected to it were reportedly eliminated by the Israeli Air Force. Israel made this disclosure public during active ceasefire negotiations, deliberately. The message was precise. Any deal that addresses missiles and enrichment while leaving Iran's covert operational architecture intact will not be accepted as a real solution. The missiles are one arm. The terror networks operating quietly across Europe, the Caucasus, and beyond are another. Dismantling one without the other is not a solution. It is a partial repair on a structure that is still burning underneath. Quds Force Commander Ismail Qani was reportedly in Iraq recently, coordinating contingency plans with Shia militias in case the ceasefire collapses. This is standard Iranian playbook. Keep the proxies warm so that if diplomacy closes, multiple fronts can activate simultaneously. Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, the West Bank, each a potential arena. What has changed is how degraded those forces now are. Hezbollah lost approximately 1,500 commanders and senior figures in the pager and walkie-talkie operations alone. Significant weapons stockpiles Iran spent years smuggling into Lebanon were destroyed. The Houthis have been largely reduced to demonstrations. The Iraqi militias absorbed severe damage from American strikes. Iran's proxy network remains dangerous. It is no longer the overwhelming force multiplier it once appeared to be. Israel's posture through all of this is worth understanding clearly. The Israeli security establishment is not hoping the ceasefire holds indefinitely. It is not planning around a long, quiet period. What it wants, communicated through both official channels and the visible readiness of its Air Force, is an agreement that actually solves the structural problems. Specifically, enrichment genuinely and verifiably dismantled, not paused. Ballistic missile capability constrained in a meaningful, enforceable way. Proxy support architecture severed, not suspended. The fear in Jerusalem is explicit. A deal that gives Iran economic relief and political survival while allowing time to rebuild degraded infrastructure is nearly as dangerous as no deal. It simply resets the clock for the next, potentially worse confrontation. With the ceasefire extended and Vance's trip suspended, the situation settles into a new, uncomfortable phase. Trump has removed the immediate military deadline, but kept the economic and naval pressure. Iran has not committed to returning to the table. Pakistan continues working as mediator. And the core disagreements, enrichment, ballistic missiles, the blockade, proxy funding, remain completely unresolved. Iran's UN envoy stated Tuesday that negotiations would happen as soon as Washington ends the naval blockade. Washington has made equally clear the blockade stays during negotiations, not before them. That gap between preconditions is itself the immediate obstacle, and behind that obstacle are three possible outcomes: a real deal, historic, binding, verifiable, that actually addresses the core issues; a partial deal, deliberately vague, that gives both sides a face-saving exit and almost certainly sets up the next conflict within a few years; or an agreement signed by civilians that the IRGC refuses to honor, which would be worse than no deal at all because it would give the illusion of resolution while the real machinery keeps running underground. Trump's extension buys time. It does not buy answers. Every side is testing how far the system can stretch without being the first to bring it down. And the question that hangs over everything, the one no intelligence briefing, no diplomatic back channel, and no public statement has been able to answer, is this: when Iran's fractured leadership finally speaks, will it speak with one voice? And if it does, will that voice be willing to make a peace that actually holds? We cover this conflict every single day. Tomorrow, the ground shifts again. If you want to understand it before everyone else does, the subscribe button is right there, and it costs you nothing.